Hello everyone, welcome to the Jayda and Stitches show. It's time for the July installment of our 2019 Folk Art Calendar Blanket. And this month we're headed to the coast where we're going to build ourselves a little lighthouse. Lighthouses come in different shapes and sizes. Some of them are made out of wooden siding, some of them are made out of stone. It all depends on where you may live and what supplies were available when your lighthouse was being built. So think about the lighthouses you've seen in your travels, or maybe the one that just happens to be down the road, and you can choose colors accordingly. The nice thing about lighthouses though is that they all tend to follow the same sort of design. We're using the same hook and the same yarn as we have for the rest of our blanket, and some of the same little embroidery techniques that we used last month when we built our town. This is a smaller applique, so it doesn't use up a whole lot of yarn. It's definitely a great scrap project. Alright, so let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, we'll grab our blankets, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up a sweet little lighthouse together. In order to make our Lighthouse Applique, you need around 30 grams or 50 yards of your lighthouse color. I'm using white. You need about half that amount in a color for your little island or the rocky outcropping you're going to build your lighthouse onto. I'm using gray for that. You need a little bit of black for some detailing and a small amount of color for the top of your lighthouse. This would be the little part of the lighthouse that houses the light, and I'm going to use red for up top on my lighthouse. This is all the same kind of yarn we've been using all along. It's a size 4 medium worsted acrylic yarn. You need a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and the hook we're using is a 5.5 millimeter, also known as an I or a 9 in the US, size 5 in the UK. And if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to click that button and the bell so you never miss another episode. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. Please visit our shop and purchase a pattern. It helps support our show, and we'll put a link to our shop in the description box down below. We're going to begin with our little island, the little rocky outcropping that sits underneath our lighthouse. So I'm using gray. We're going to begin with a slip knot. If you are comfortable using the half double crochet foundation stitch, you are going to half double crochet foundation stitch 17 of them. So 17 half double crochet foundation stitches. If you are not comfortable with this sort of a stitch, you can go ahead and chain 18 and then turn your work and half double crochet into the second chain from the hook and half double crochet all the way back. So either way, we're all going to wind up with 17 half double crochets. If you want to give this a try or you need a refresher, we have a link to a half double crochet foundation stitch tutorial that we did in the description box, and you can check that out. Take a moment to refresh yourself and give it a whirl. Whether you've half double crochet foundation stitched 17 or you chained 18, turned, and half double crocheted into the second chain and each one back, we will all have 17 half double crochets at the end of row 1. And remember, half double crochet foundation stitch is the equivalent of working the foundation chain row and the first row of half double crochets. So at the end of row 1, we all have 17 half double crochets. We're going to chain 1 and turn our work. So now we're all working back across those 17 half double crochets, and we're going to half double crochet the first 2 stitches together. So you're going to yarn over your hook, pick up a loop in that first stitch, and because we don't want a really big thick stitch, we're just going to pick up a loop in the next stitch. So that'll be 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull back through everything. We're going to do that again. So yarn over, pick up a loop in the first stitch, pick up a loop in the next stitch, yarn over, pull back through everything. So we've half double crocheted 2 stitches together twice at the beginning of row 2. You're going to half double crochet in each stitch now all the way across until you get to the 4th last stitch, because we're going to do exactly the same thing at the end of this row. Once you've reached the last 4 stitches in the row, we're going to half double crochet the first 2 of that remaining 4 stitches together and half double crochet the last 2 of those stitches together. So we've gone from a stitch count of 17 all the way down to a stitch count of 13. So we're at 13 stitches at the end of row 2. Chain 1, turn. We're going to half double crochet the first 2 stitches of this row together. So row 3 begins with a half double crochet, 2 stitches together, but only 1. And then you're going to half double crochet across to the last 2 stitches, and we'll half double crochet the last 2 stitches together as well. At the end of row 3, you're going to half double crochet those last 2 stitches together. And that is it for our little rocky outcropping. Now I want to say, the more uneven and awkward your little rocky outcropping looks, the better. So if this doesn't look like a nice smooth piece of crochet, don't worry about it. Because little rocky islands that lighthouses are built on usually are kind of organic looking. They look like a bunch of tumbled rocks all together. So if this looks a bit awkward, that's so much the better for the aesthetic of your lighthouse. You're going to leave a nice long tail, because this is what you're going to use to sort of sew this part down to your blanket. But you won't be going all the way around, because we're going to be building our lighthouse directly on top of our little rocky outcropping. So leave yourself some yarn, you can fasten off, and take a moment to weave in that little short tail that began back and forth across some of those stitches. We're going to begin building our lighthouse now. We're going to build it directly onto our little island. So take your lighthouse color. We're going to begin with a slip knot. You can pick up your island. It doesn't matter which side you're looking at, whether you're looking at this side or this side. It's entirely up to you. You're going to find the first stitch in the row, count in 1, and you're going to join your yarn with a slip stitch to the second stitch in from the edge. So it doesn't matter what side you're looking at. We're going to chain 1 and half double crochet all into that same second stitch from the edge. You're going to half double crochet across the next 8 stitches, and that should leave you 1 stitch away from the other edge. You should have 9 stitches all together at the end of the first row of our little lighthouse. We're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to crochet, half double crochet back across all 9 of those stitches. So we're actually going to work 5 rows in total of 9 stitches each. So at the end of each row, chain 1, turn, half double crochet back across all 9 of those stitches until you've got 5 rows in total of half double crochet all 9 stitches per row. So chain 1, turn at the end of every row, and just half double crochet back. We now have 5 rows of half double crochet, the first 5 rows of our lighthouse, and each row is 9 stitches long. We're going to start to taper our lighthouse now. So we're going to chain 1, turn, and we're going to half double crochet those first 2 stitches together. Half double crochet across the next 5 stitches. And you're going to half double crochet the last 2 stitches together. So we've gone from a stitch count of 9 down to a stitch count of 7. So that's row 6 of our little lighthouse. We're going to chain 1, turn, and you're going to work 4 more rows of just straight half double crochet, but each of these rows will now have 7 stitches in it instead of 9. Remember to chain 1 and turn at the end of every row. We're at the end of row 10 now of our little lighthouse. So we've got 5 rows of 9 stitches each and 5 rows of 7 stitches each. We're going to close it in a little more now, so we're still tapering. We're going to chain 1 and turn. We're going to half double crochet the first 2 stitches of row 11 together. This is row 11 of the lighthouse. Half double crochet across the next 3 stitches. And half double crochet the last 2 stitches together. And remember, the last stitch of your rows is sometimes curving down the edge just a little bit, so don't forget to look for it there. So we're now down to 5 stitches in total. Chain 1, turn, and you're going to work 4 more rows at just 5 stitches each. Remember to chain 1 and turn at the end of every row. Alright, we have 15 rows now in our little lighthouse. You can lay it down and you can sort of see we're getting a bit of a picture happening here. Here's our little rocky island. Here's the main build of our lighthouse. And now we want to put a little observation deck up top. So we're just going to chain out 4. Then we can turn our work. So we should have 4 chains sticking out from the edge of our 15th row. We're going to skip the first chain from the hook and single crochet into those other 3 chains. So the other 3 chains in that little chained foundation row we built off the edge of the top of our lighthouse. Think like an architect. We're actually building a little observation deck. We're going to single crochet across the 5 stitches of row 15. And now we're going to do exactly the same thing out the other side. We're going to chain 4. We're going to skip the first chain from the hook, single crochet into those 3 chains that are left. But because we want it to match the other side of our observation deck, we're going to hold our lighthouse upside down and we're going to slip stitch into the bottom. So you see I'm slip stitching into the bottom of that single crochet from the edge of row 15. And that is a fun little trick that gives us a little observation deck at the top of our lighthouse. We're going to go ahead and trim our yarn now. You can leave yourself a nice long tail. This is what you're going to use to sew around the white part of your lighthouse when we sew it down to our blanket. Fasten off. And if you did not work over your little short tail at the beginning, go ahead and weave that in. And now we're ready to move on to the top. Now we're going to add the little cap, the little top of the part of the lighthouse that actually houses the light. So grab your other color. I'm using a nice bright red for this. We're going to begin with a slip knot. You can pick up your lighthouse and you want to identify those middle 5 stitches. So there's 3 on either end, which are the little observation deck, and it's the middle 5 stitches that we want to concern ourselves with. So you're going to join with a slip stitch to that first of the middle 5 stitches, or the 4th stitch in from the edge. Chain 1 and half double crochet all into the same stitch. You're going to half double crochet into each of those 4 stitches. So that's 5 half double crochet to begin the top of our lighthouse. We're going to chain 1, turn, half double crochet across, chain 1, turn, and half double crochet across. So you're going to work 3 rows in total, 5 half double crochet each for the top of our little lighthouse. We're getting it started. Don't forget to chain 1 and turn at the end of every row. We should all now have 3 rows of half double crochet. Each row is 5 stitches each. We're just going to finish off the little top of this roof now. We're going to chain 1, turn our work. We're going to half double crochet, we're going to slip stitch. We're slip stitching now, nice and loose. Slip stitch into the first 2 stitches. Slip stitch into the 3rd stitch. We're going to make a little picot by chaining 3. Slip stitching back into the same stitch, so all that is taking place in that 3rd stitch. And then you're going to slip stitch into each of the last 2 stitches. Don't forget that last stitch is often just curling down the edge a little bit. And that's that. If you lay it flat now, you can see that it's got just a little tiny peak of a roof, just the smallest little sort of suggestion of that little tiny peak that so many little lighthouses have. So we've got a rocky outcropping, the main part of our lighthouse, a little observation deck, and the little top that actually houses the light at the top. That's it. You also want to leave a little bit of yarn for sewing around the red part of your lighthouse. You can fasten off. We've got all sorts of little strings hanging on this thing now. And if you have a little bit of your beginning thread or your beginning yarn sort of sticking out the edge, or if you didn't manage to work over top of it, just take a second to weave in that short tail. Before we sew our lighthouses down, we want to add just a couple of little details. I'm going to cut a nice long length of black yarn here, and I want to put a little tiny window up here, sort of like a little observation window, and then a little front door down at the bottom so that we've all got a way to get into our little lighthouses. So this is very similar to the embroidery we've done for a few of our other appliques so far. I want to just bring my yarn from back to front. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail out the back so I have something to tie it down, tie all my ends together with. I'm going to hop over a couple of stitches. I'm just basically aiming to get a little sort of centered looking window in the top third of my lighthouse. So this is really freehanding. I'm not really counting anything out. I'm just trying to get what looks like an even little square somewhere near the top, in the top third of my little lighthouse. So I'm just hopping around. I'm not pulling very tightly. And I'm just going to make a nice simple square up there. I'm not going to add anything to it. I'm not going to add a window pane. I just want it to be like a simple little square. That looks so cute. Now I can knot my two ends together back here, trim my long tail, and I can move down and put in a little door. So there's our little window detail. I want to add a little door detail now down here. So I'm going to find my 3 bottom middle stitches. I'm going to bring my yarn up from back to front on the outside of those 3 stitches. I want to make sure I'm not pulling it all the way through. I want to leave some yarn back there for knotting. I'm only going to go up a couple rows in a nice straight line, hop across 3 stitches. So here's the top of my door. I'm not pulling very tight because I don't want to stretch any of my stitches out. There's the other side of my door, and now I'm just going to do the bottom of my door. And because this is so small, let's see here. I'm just going to put the tiniest of little door knobs in here. So I'm just going to bring my yarn out about where I feel a doorknob would naturally sit. And instead of doing a French knot or anything, I just want a little tiny sort of straight stitch. I'm just going to hop over top of a piece of a stitch, bring my yarn back down, and there's just a little tiny door knob. So just the simplest of details on my lighthouse. Flip it over, knot those ends together, trim what's left over, and it's ready to sew down. And there you go. Remember, you're putting your lighthouse on the opposite side of your blanket from where you've put your barn. So if your barn's on the left, your lighthouse is on the right. Vice versa, if your barn is on the right, your lighthouse is on the left. It sort of offsets the design. We hope you enjoyed making that sweet little lighthouse along with us, and we will see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a wonderful week, everyone. Bye!
Hi everyone, this is Mama in Stitches. Thank you for watching. Here are a few other videos you might enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also click the like button and the bell. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.